People need to learn to live for this republic instead of die for political death cults. Now, I've been picking on the Trump regime for a very long time now. It's time to go back to picking on radical leftists in a politically correct manner. With the impending doom of Texas, a lot of people are blaming global warming / climate change for what's going on in Texas. However, what people are ignoring is freak weather incidences have been part of human history since humans have been recording history. That's the truth. And this is no different than Hurricane Andrew, if anybody's old enough to remember Hurricane Andrew, when that hit Florida and everybody, oh my God, at that time it was El Nino. Everybody was all hot and bothered about El Nino, the baby boy. Okay, so that was the thing then, and that was global warming. That was always global warming. What I found out, if you live long enough, I'm starting to really identify with my grandparents, because if you live long enough, you start realizing everyone is full of shit, basically. Climate change is a depopulation cult. A lot of people have known that. I mean, if you look at Al Gore is basically preaching a false religion of depopulation, a false religion of how this half of the world, the Western Hemisphere, has to do without so others can do with. If you notice this, the death cult of global warming promotes depopulation of the Western Hemisphere. However, what you'll also notice, the radical left, which supports the death cult of global warming / climate change, supports the importation of non-Western people into the Western Hemisphere to make up for the negative birth rates in the Western Hemisphere, never encouraging Westerners to screw more and have more kids. That's not what's being encouraged by the death cult of radical leftism, is it? No. They're saying the whole world is going to end because there are too many white people in the world, so we need to import these non-Western people into the Western Hemisphere. And what does this do? And I'll explain how I'm starting to identify with my grandparents. My grandparents lived for this republic, for the wonder of this republic, the greatness of this republic. Now, my grandfather was born, I believe, in 1917, in a rural part of Missouri in a Reformed Latter-day Saints community, okay, that was founded by our family, by the Whitmer and Page family, which is who we're directly descended from, Hiram Page and Catherine Whitmer. So he had a grasp of rural reality. And then he served in World War II. And then after World War II, he served in the Korean War. And then after that, he served in the Vietnam War. But he had an undying love of this republic, for what this republic stood for. Today, we have, both on the radical left and the so-called right, you have people that are willing to die. They want to fight for and die for their political cult. Whether that cult is global warming, or whether that cult is the depopulation of the Western Hemisphere, or whether that cult is the importation of so-called refugees into the Western Hemisphere. And how does this all tie together? Well, the depopulation, discouraging Westerners to reproduce. And I'm not just talking about white people, I'm talking about naturalized and normalized Western citizens of Hispanic descent, of also of Arab or Middle Eastern descent, also of East Indian descent, also of Asian descent. We have a problem with Westerners accepting the death cult, the dictates of the death cult, and thinking that it is bad for Westerners to reproduce, but encouraging other groups of people to reproduce that do not share our values. And what this does is this allows for the destruction of the American mindset, the mindset of unity that was in the American people. You see things like Black Lives Matter attacking the nuclear family and attacking these are American values. They're Western values, but they're also American values that created this country and that would keep this country moving if they were stuck with. But they're not stuck with, and that's why I made that playlist Americana, which goes over American cultural strength. It's a lot of its food, a lot of its different home economic stuff and things like that. But these are important bases of this republic. The stronger the individual, the stronger the group, the stronger the republic. Okay? So, now let's move on to the liberal death cult. So, a lot of people, like what's her face? Greta Thunberg. And I'm leaving links to all this in the description. Please feel free to follow my links and view these things and read these things. Greta Thunberg with, "You have stolen my childhood," and what was the other thing? Your people aren't following the science. This may surprise a great number of people, but as the true scientists that explain that there is not one shred of tangible or demonstrable evidence that global warming or climate change is even real, like they're pointing out, a lot of the people that promote climate change aren't scientists. They're lawyers or they're little girls from Sweden that like to say, "How dare you?" Okay? But "how dare you" does not a scientist make. Okay? The actual science is not what people think it is. The actual science states that, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is required for life on Earth. It is part of the carbon cycle. It allows plant life to exist, which in turn allows animal life to exist, which in turn has spurred an agricultural revolution. And people are whining about, "Oh my, it's the end of the world because CO2." And what this does is people like me, conservationist-minded people like me. Remember, I was a Boy Scout. I'm all into conservation. I agree with it, what have you. I love conservation. But it makes people that are against pollution look like kooky religious freaks that worship the Earth Mother Gaia under Minister Al Gore, okay? And that's the whole thing. I'm all for environmental justice, but what I'm not for is anti-science, which is what global warming and climate change is. It is an anti-science death cult of depopulation that focuses on the West. And who pollutes more? Not the West. That's the truth. Look at who has greater numbers of pollution and who doesn't have the same environmental standards because they're considered developing countries. When they're not developing countries, they're outpacing us because they don't have to obey the same environmental standards. That's the truth. Now, going into this, learning to live for the Republic again, this is the thing. You have Antifa, and I'm going to put in the description Antifa meltdowns. You have all these stupid anarchists and all these stupid Trump freaks that want to fight and die for Antifa and fight and die for Donald Trump. But what you do not have is people willing to live for America, to live for this republic. And that is the biggest problem. People are romanticizing death. They're romanticizing abortion. They're romanticizing depopulation. They're romanticizing murdering people in the name of their political cult. What they are not romanticizing is living their life for the Republic and for themselves even. And the best way to start living for the Republic is start recognizing that you are more than a monetary value. And that is the biggest thing. This country has fallen for the same failures of Marxism, seeing people as monetary things and interchangeable units. People are not androids, people are people. So the first step in learning to live for this republic is learning to live for yourself. That's all for this video. Please do follow the links in the description now.